What's going on, everybody? It is September 1st. This is the Daily AI Show. And today we're talking about the big AI tease, meaning why are businesses flirting but not necessarily committing to AI? And I've been excited about this topic, I think, since we put it on the calendar. I think it's a really, really cool topic to get into. I'm excited to hear everybody's professional opinions on it. I know for me, God, there's so many different rabbit holes we can go down here, from, hype versus reality, the data implications, data challenges, cost implications, change management obviously is a huge part of it. So I don't know, does anybody have some, as always, we sort of start like who wants to jump in here, or I can. Why are businesses talking a lot about AI but not committing? Go for it, Aaron.
Okay, so I think there's a couple of things going on here, and it partly, I suspect, partly depends on what kind of business we're talking about firstly. So the big businesses, the large corporates, that sort of stuff, I suspect in a lot of cases their concern is AI is great. We know there's productivity advantages, but we're worried about privacy issues. We're worried about our clients' data, our internal data. At the moment, we don't necessarily want to just stick all our info in an LLM. So I think that's probably going to be one of the main issues there. The smaller businesses, I think it's either a case of they just don't really know anything about it, or they don't think it has any benefit to them at this stage. And then you've probably got a group in the middle that are more like, well, I don't know. I mean, is it a good idea? Is it not a good idea? I don't know whether we should do this. How do we learn? How do we get our staff involved? How do we trust them? How do we get the benefit out of it? And I think that's probably, from my perspective, I think that covers the broad spectrum. There's probably some other options out there, but I think it's mostly either a wait and see about the privacy and all that stuff, or just don't know if it's a good idea or not. That's my thoughts anyway.
I blame lawyers. So we'll just start with the fact that all innovation is usually killed by those who seek to put shackles because of risk aversion. So lawyers typically fall in that camp. So you might have somebody in one department saying, this is great, we need to jump on this, our competition is going to. And if it's a large enough organization, they're going to go, whoa, slow down. And then legal gets a hold of it, and they basically put all the shackles on all the employees, which is why you have corporate wide bans on using these tools from a minor level. But on a major level, it's just ignorance. Like, it's ignorance and some of the aspects of people using it because they feel like their IP is going to be stolen by some method of prompting. And quite frankly, I don't necessarily buy into that camp, even though OpenAI is even saying, well, if we won't train on your data. I'm not convinced that even if they did train on the data, they'd have like this special sauce for Coca-Cola. Like, would you be able to know the formula for Coca-Cola if you were in every board meeting and every call from Coca-Cola? No, I don't think you would. So I don't think it's exactly that. I think they're going to hide stuff that's relevant to their IP in different ways. But I guess going back to the topic at hand, I think that companies get excited about this, but then they get pulled back based on their risk aversion or their fear of the unknown or things that might interfere with their business model.
I think it comes down to two main things here. One is size, right? The more monolithic the organization, the slower it moves, right? And then the basic corporate approach, or the approach, whether that be corporate culture or corporate structure, is, are they built to react and adapt quickly? Because a lot of corporations or a lot of companies that are out there are built on what I'll call a traditional model, right? There's a clear hierarchy. They're using top down and all that kind of stuff, and they're not built to pivot quickly. But when you have if you have a system that's built on an agile concept, then it's all about pivoting at any point. So they're able to adapt much quicker than, we'll say, in a traditional structure.
I want to say that regardless of size of organization, the company is in an operational cadence, and interrupting that cadence in order to even evaluate the fire hose of opportunities and approaches that could be taken is difficult. And so there's an inertia. There's an inertia in adoption in any new technology. And this one, has certainly gotten a lot of press attention. But ironically, like I logged into my formerly corporate position as chief operating officer email just to see who's approaching me now, through the sales channel of email. My email was out there everywhere in every sales-oriented database of things. And I was surprised that there aren't any AI offerings that are being made to me as a chief operating officer of a medium-sized company.
That's
so
different.
Perfect opportunity for email spammers. Go.
Andy's requesting that. Andy wants more spam.
He wants spam the man.
I'm no longer in that position.
It was
but
former.
I did have access to that email because I continue to be an advisor to the company. But I was surprised that I really didn't see anything. And, let me ask you guys here on this panel, how much time have you invested personally in learning about AI and getting to the point where you even have a minimal facility of saying, okay, here's some opportunities to get in? Well, it's been an enormous amount of time and effort on my part to learn to this stage. And I'm still unclear about which actual solutions I would provide as a recommendation, because I'm not selling a particular solution, but I'm trying to evaluate and understand all those things as I would from the position of a chief operating officer and say, what could I employ and which tools and which vendors should I go to? That's going to take some time to adopt. So I think that there's that kind of inertia involved.
So, Andy, would you say that most positions like that in that C-suite they lean towards a wait and see until they have it's proven out, they've seen ROI numbers and those kinds of things?
It's not even I would say it's not even possible for when you're engrossed in all of the things that you're already doing to try to keep a company moving. It's not even, you might even say, let's have a meeting, let's talk about it. And hopefully you have a person in the organization who has the time available to go out and start to do some research. But, are they going to come back in a day? No, it's going to take that person before they're confident that they can make recommendations to the organization. It's going to take them months because of all the things that could be done. Now, there's some simple things. And I know, Carl is implementing with smaller businesses with, some really, I think, efficient early solutions. And that's really one of the big recommendations that one would make to an organization is, here, do the simple little things. And I've seen you voice the same thing, Brian. That is that's kind of the limit of what's possible immediately, unless you're in a really large organization that has an IT organization, which includes potentially engineering and people who are already implementing AI.
I like that idea, Andy. It's almost like you build your house with straw first. Yeah, it's not the best, but just build it with straw. And then you'll realize, what, we need to do wood. And then you'll feel like, well, maybe brick's the best one. So I think I love your kind of thinking in that a lot of these companies, they aren't, but they should be playing around with it. At least that's my contention, is that the ones that are pausing are actually going to get rolled over by smaller companies, even that are taking the risk and saying, what, this might not be what we use in 6 months, but it's what we're using for the next 3 months. And then we'll pivot again. And that right there shows me companies that are actually gonna jump ahead. They're nimble, as I think Jimmy said, or that they have a culture of change. And that right there is is brilliant for companies. The ones that don't, maybe because, like you said, it's too big to turn the ship and there's too many variables. So I like the idea, Andy.
So let me just say that I believe that there are individuals in organizations who are using ChatGPT right now to accelerate their own personal performance and take advantage of all the incredible skill that's in that massive knowledge set. But operationalizing with simple automations and with interactive chat, conversational AI, those things take a lot more effort than just the familiarization that you gain from using ChatGPT yourself.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
one of the things. Go ahead, Brad.
Go ahead, Beth, and I'll talk after that. Yeah. I got a lot of ideas in my head. Go ahead.
One of the things that I think is needs to be a part of the conversation, and it's kind of like the undercurrent, is that AI isn't going to be a magic pill right away, right? I mean, it's like installing a new phone system, right? Like, that's cool. We're going to be able to do all these new things with a phone system. It's going to be able to answer calls for you. It's going to be an AI phone system. But it's very painful for a small period of time in order to do that. AI is that with no guarantee.
Yeah, and I think, Andy, you made a good point that I didn't think about, which was even if they are interested, they've got to assign the resources and take the time to about it, and it could take months. You're right. I can't speak for any of the rest of you guys, but I spent months just playing and learning with ChatGPT and Midjourney alone. And you forget about that after a while. And you roll that out into a big corporation where they've got thousands of staff. Yeah, it's absolutely. I can now understand from that perspective how much it's like, oh, whoa, this is just, we need to go real slow on this. So over to you.
So with all the businesses that we've done presentation and discovery calls to, the most common theme, and Andy, you're right, we're targeting more the non-tech, more small to medium-sized businesses, the ones that you would not think, things like manufacturing, metal contracting, woodworking, all these companies. And to what you were saying, Robert, they have the greatest potential to leap their competition just because of what it's like. The analogy where when I was in Peru, everyone there had a cell phone, and it's like they bypassed the entire like landline. They went straight to cell phone. So that's the reason why we're targeting them. If they can bypass everything else and go right to AI, they have the greatest return on investment. But what we found was, though, when we went to these companies, the most common theme was there are maybe one or two people using. There wasn't a adoption like company-wide. And yeah, they didn't really know, like outside of content creation, they didn't really know how to use it correctly, right? So even in those presidents and CEOs didn't. But when we showed them different uses beyond content creation, that's when like their minds were blown, and it's like, hey, we want to implement this. And it's like
that's a huge part of it, right? It's like you have to, with Scaled, the company I work for, we keep saying crawl, walk, run. And I think we've said it on this podcast as well. And you're right, Carl. I mean, so I'll be up in New York, for instance, later this month, since it's September, and I'll be with a client, and I'll be running AI workshops with sales teams up there. And this is something I think I'll probably be doing multiple times a month for the foreseeable future. Eventually, that will be virtual, but we're going to be doing it in person for a while, because we know as a company we have a lot to learn, and being in person is going to be a better experience overall, and we'll get the feedback loops going faster. But amazingly, my CEO, Jake Dunlap, put out a poll. He's got like 70,000 followers on LinkedIn. So when he puts out a poll, it actually does get some good feedback on it. Kind of like 2 years ago when everybody was doing polls. But what we found was 70% of your sales development representatives, your account executives in sales, are using ChatGPT. But the management has no method or manner to operationalize it, to put governance over it, to figure out how to make the best rise to the top. It's not that they don't, it's a fear of the unknown. It's the ignorance of not understanding. I don't mean that in a bad way, because to your point, Andy, how long has it taken most of us to get to where we are today? Hundreds and hundreds of hours since the beginning of the year. I think that's fair. And so that's why all these consulting agencies are standing up. And then, of course, from the COO standpoint, who do I trust? Who's just saying they're an AI specialist? Who's saying they're an expert? We keep seeing more and more of these titles show up. Who knows what? What do you know? What is AI? How big is that term? So there's a lot going on. And I'll just tell you from our experience on the sales side of it, that's exactly what we ran into. Knowing that companies can and will need customized, more or less Carl, more what you're doing with chatbots and stuff like that. And knowing that that is the future, but knowing also that what we have to do today is show sales development representatives what a prompt library is, how to write posts that go beyond content creation. Because when you open the eyes, to your point, Carl, when you open the eyes to a sales department and go, hey, so-and-so, senior VP of sales, did you know that if you're struggling with an SDR and onboarding and on-ramping, which typically is a 90-day process across the board, that's to get them up to a point where maybe there's some ROI or they're actually connecting with clients and so on and so forth, making calls, that you can take challenges that we're doing, write this prompt, it will gamify it, turn it into a trivia question based off the information of your company, and they can go through and answer the questions. You can give them 4 choices, or ChatGPT will give you 4 choices. If I answer wrong in this SDR, it'll explain to me why I was wrong and what the better move would have been. And all of that can be trained in prior to. This all can be done inside of ChatGPT on the paid version of it using Code Interpreter. People don't realize that that is available to them. You know, and so that's like a lot of it. I think, Carl, what I hear you saying, what I at least would agree with is the education has to come along with the product and the service, because people don't know what they don't know, and that's not their fault. That's, you know, it's our job to go out there and explain it to them along the way and show them the ROI. Well,
that's a huge point with the launch of ChatGPT for Enterprise, because I guarantee you there's going to be a lot of enterprises that are going to buy this and apply it, implement it, but have no training provided or minimal training provided. So you will get, there's going to be like 10, 20, hundreds of employees that may just use ChatGPT once or twice a week. And I'm like, that's not a good use of your $60, $70 per month. Like that.
Well, okay. I won't push back necessarily, but I feel like there's a canyon that we're not talking about. So there's the ChatGPT interface, which Brian gave a great example of Code Interpreter, but that's one instance. That's one individual. You can't systematize that and do it at scale unless you teach everyone to do exactly that. And then it's not really efficient. So what we're seeing is this chat interface, ChatGPT, Claude 2, whatever, Bard. Then you have over here the fully, coded or no code automated scenario that does what Brian just said at scale. Where we're having a problem is companies can't bridge that gap. They can't jump from one to the other. So where we can, Carl, go into organization and do a training module and say, and everybody using ChatGPT and everything they do for the next week or whatever, bring it to every conversation, bring it to every problem and task and workflow you have, and just see what you can do with it. And you're basically getting those employees, you train them to do so or whatever, but you're getting those employees to think about it. Then you're going to find some shining stars that will cream to the top and be like, you know what? I did some more research and I did some more on my own, kind of like every one of us in this room did, right? Every one of us back last year was like, this is interesting. I'm gonna dive into this off my hours, like when I'm not being paid, or during my weekends, like Brian does on a regular basis. I'm sure his wife loves him. So I think that the problem is that we don't identify that as the first path. You get those people, you find those really shining stars, and that person is going to be the one that, you know what we should do? We should do this little blah 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 blah, and then you're over here. I think that's where the gap is really needing some AI ops people, is really needing some good consulting companies that are not Deloitte. Deloitte's going to, charge hundreds of thousands of dollars for Coca-Cola and blah, blah, blah. But what we're missing is the one that can bridge the gap. And that's where we're going to find true scale.
So here's what I would recommend. Knowing what I know now, I would say, first, take a quarter-long perspective on this thing. And so with the upcoming fourth quarter, put into everyone's OKRs one project or one task that is going to inform their department about what the possibilities are. And so they're going to do some self-education and or turn to resources that you provide overall from the top down, that including potentially a consultant, as you suggest, but make it an objective of the organization to start to examine what's possible without any intention of just pulling the trigger and doing something right away. But if you were going to, be strategic about it and get going with something, I think one of the biggest wins that you can, the early wins that you can get is, like from a COO's perspective, you've got all these different business processes in the organization, and we routinely go to the effort of trying to document those and try to create SOPs, standard operating procedures, and document that so that anybody who comes along into a position knows what the reference resource is and they can do it. But where is it? It's in a Google Doc somewhere. And, I don't have time for that. I've got too much to work with. But if you implemented that in the Carl Ye method, which is put it in Slack, right? Make the chat bot internally focused on your internal documentation and start to update that. This is a major objective. Like, let's consolidate all of our internal information and documentation and make it accessible through a conversational LLM. That changes the game in terms of search and retrieval and education on corporate information. So you have these two areas where conversational chatbots can be implemented. One is internal facing, and the other one is probably in customer support, right? So customer support, but that's going to be like if you're using Zendesk, Zendesk's going to turn on an available chat bot for you to look at the FAQs that you've already put into Zendesk. And it's going to work that way if you're already using one of the major customer support operational software as a service.
Yeah, you made me think of it, Andy. Like you made me think of this. I should have a banner. We have a pushback banner. I need to have a "Here comes a firefighter" story because it'll happen a lot on the show. And you guys get like a rolling eyes emoji or something. Like, oh, he's going to talk about firefighting. But no, for anybody that listened to the show, I was a firefighter for 8 years, and it's funny, Andy. What you made me think of is the single. I will tell you the single worst thing you could be called, thank you, that you could be called as a firefighter was Lance. Lance was short for freelancer, meaning that the worst that could happen is you get on a fire scene. Now, I was 23 when I first started firefighting. I was a rookie. If I got on a fire scene, if some senior like engine driver after that fire, while we were all cooling down and kind of sitting on a curb somewhere at some apartment complex that was burning, and said, "Hey, Lance, kiss of death," to me as a rookie. And the reason was because the last thing you do is go off on your own or decide that you have a different agenda fighting a fire. It's so controlled. It's so necessary to be working in tandem, in teams, as one unit. When the chief or the captain says, "Go in the door, make entry. I want you to do a right-handed search, sweep, blah, 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 meet to the second floor. Ladder will be on the roof, cutting a vent hole," right? Whatever the case is, they want you to do. And that's it. You don't think anything else. And military is very precision like that because these rules need to be followed. These SOPs need to be followed to an exact amount. And what I find in the corporate side is, to your point, what I heard, Andy, is that oftentimes these companies don't drill down far enough into what specifically do we want this outcome to be. And then if they get really, really laser focused over that quarter or the OKRs of, okay, what do we actually want it to do for us that would be better than yesterday? And then if you start to really break down all the way down to those little chewable pieces, I think that's where businesses can start to have a lot of value. And that's also the deal. Like people, Carl, you've talked about it. The expectations are a little out of line with what sometimes AI can do at this time. But if you get down to these smaller pieces, I do believe most companies could find really fast, really easy wins, but they're going to move the needle this much. And then over time, you can build on that success. But if you're just going to say, "Oh, I would like it to fix my call tree or my decision tree for the new phone system," or I want to go from being AAA automotive in the yellow pages because it puts me at the top. AAA puts me alphabetically on the first page, and there's a reason for that. And now I have to have a website. Yeah, I agree with you guys. How do you make that quantum leap, over to it? So anyway, that's where my brain went with it, is like, it's more common to be these freelancers because you don't have the top down, management saying, that's the last thing we want you to do. We want to have this cohesive strategy moving forward.
Right.
Beth?
Go, Beth.
So I'm gonna come at this from a slightly different direction, because that's really part of the
just kidding. Just clarify.
Theater major. Here we go.
And
like, if you've been watching for long enough, you know I come from an improvisational angle. But in this context, I think where the top down needs to be is with an amnesty or a permission. Right. So that the company can have a company-wide discussion. And that's one of the things that I do as a consultant or facilitator, is to facilitate these large-scale kind of change conversations, so that you can bubble up what is happening and what your people think could happen. Right. So amnesty. Yep. I'm already using it. You said I couldn't. I'm on my phone right. Like, or whatever that is. And then you have an opportunity to evaluate and analyze what's working about that. Where do we want to put some guardrails? Where do we not want to put some guardrails? That I think when your top down is saying, yes, we want to know, then you can implement where there's already fertile ground.
Yeah, right? But don't forget, there's the bottom up as well. So where you're going to have permission from the top down, you're going to have pushback from the bottom up, because you're like, well, wait, what is this going to do to my job? Basically, this tool can do what I can do. And so you actually have to have a culture. This is where kind of HR gets in there. Is like, let's train you. Don't worry, your job's fine. Kind of get that piece done, because that's at least our approach at WSI. But
that's
I want to
top-down decision too, right? Like,
yeah,
because
it's both. Yeah, so top down to make the decision to help the bottom up. Right. Yeah.
Right. To give the reassurance.
Right, right, exactly. And the training and the knowledge base, and also to identify aptitude and attitudes of AI adoption from the soldiers. But one thing I do want to bring back to Andy's point, I forgot to mention when he was talking, is the idea that workflows. Like, I was listening to a podcast, those two Australian guys, they're brilliant, by the way, you should listen to them. Great conversation. They're two brothers, and they're just so good together. But one of the things they brought up is like, this is great, this new tool, every week it's a new tool. It's like, this is great, but I don't have time to see how it can make it work in my workflow. There's 10 others that could probably do the exact same thing. I don't have time to test which one will work best, because right now I'm sticking with what I already know works. And so do I have time to do an extra 10% increase in productivity, or 20 or 50, but it's going to take me a week to figure out how to implement it? And that's where we're back to the topic of today, AITs. That's kind of harsh. I get it. It was a clickbait, but the point is that we're companies are not disingenuous. They're like, we don't really have the capabilities to integrate this. This is too hard for us to stop what we're doing, affect our basic productivity, because we have to teach it to our people, and we don't have enough experts on the outside to bring in, because they're still figuring out which tools they should pitch to us as consultants. It's a minefield. Also, it's kind of almost what's it called, eye of the storm, or it's like a time that you're waiting. It's like we're not quite sure. That's why it's not quite moving as fast in adoption, is because of these barriers.
So that, I mean, with like, look, 3 minutes here left on the show, that's a great place to sort of go back to, which is, okay, so at what point do you have to build the website and get out of the yellow pages? At what point, Andy, as a CEO, do you say, we can no longer wait, because the impact of waiting is so negative to the point where we won't be where we need to be, or we won't be competitive, or whatever the case? I talk about this all the time with data, right? I keep saying to everybody, if you do one thing right now, go clean your house, your internal house of data. Because regardless of what AI tool or solution you want to have 3, 6, 9, 12 months from now, it's going to require clean data. And if your house is a mess, if you have a horrible foundation, you can't build anything on it. This is the tenets of business intelligence from 4 or 5 years ago when I was doing with data analytics. You can't build anything on dirty data. So if you do nothing today, I will say, just the first thing I would suggest to any business is, if you're not going to move on AI, and I think there's a lot of reasons why that may strategically be the right move today, what you can do is go clean your house. And
that is a brilliant
you'll
advice,
be in a great
Brian.
position. So what else can businesses do today as we sort of wrap up? Any other suggestions?
But I was going to say, brilliant advice. Listen to Brian. He's a firefighter. He knows. Anyways, that's
second
good
thing that you can
answer to
do.
everything.
Second thing that you can do is document your business processes, right?
Yes.
Because those are gonna reveal the places where you can add in some automation. And so document like top level, do deep dive, like document down to as granular as you can, because those reveal the opportunities and then are also the pieces of information you're going to need when you automate.
I would add, try to identify the champions internally in the organization who are already doing something and get into dialogue with them. Find out what they're thinking and where they think, you know, the company might make application.
Yeah, and on top of that, I think it's, even if you haven't identified a champion, you need to start finding somebody to at least stick their toe in the water and have a play with it and figure out where it might be usable. Someone that can report to the boss or a senior manager, so that you're just getting started identifying possibilities. And then once you're a little bit more clear on it and they know your internal structures, then you might be better placed to have that person guide you in a right direction. As Andy said, you know, that person could become your champion if they aren't already.
Love it. Anything else? Nope. Fantastic.
Hi, Carl. Get Carl in. He'll sort it all out for you.
I mean,
allocating your budget.
Yeah. All right. Well, listen, I didn't mention at the top of the show, but this has been Aloha Friday, as you can see through some of us.
You like my
I
Hawaiian
don't know if
shirt?
anybody noticed. Anybody noticed? It's a new one, though.
Carl, what is wrong with you, Carl? Do you hate Aloha? What's wrong with you?
I do not own a Hawaiian shirt. I've never used it.
It's a 3-day weekend to go
It's an
buy
Amazon
one.
fix, Carl. It's an Amazon fix.
Some of us went and invested in the costume here.
The costume?
Yeah.
Uniform. Theater major.
It's business casual.
This show is, if anything, we're always trying new things, and Aloha Friday always seemed like a good idea, so we're rolling with it. It'll be interesting when Aaron's in the summer and we're all in the winter, and none of us want to put it on, and Aaron will be like finally in Perth, Australia, wearing the sleeveless Aloha shirts. But anyway, listen, this is it's Friday. This has been a good conversation, man. Like every other conversation we have. I feel like there's 4 more hours of deep dive discussion, which just means we have plenty of more content to come. So for today, we haven't mentioned it in a while. Beth, you're usually on this, but hey, let me just remind you guys real quick before we head out where you can find us. So, you know, we're continuing to expand. Obviously, we're live every single day on LinkedIn Live, as well as YouTube, which people don't necessarily realize. So we're on YouTube as well. Then after the show, we not only will you be able to find the shows again, replays on LinkedIn and YouTube, but also you will find the episode. And it's a video episode on Spotify. So you can listen to it in your car as an audio version, or if you prefer, you can actually watch it just like you're seeing it right now on Spotify. As well as that, we are on TikTok. And as Jumi has been taking up that charge, I looked at it yesterday because somebody asked about where we were on TikTok, and we have multiple videos on there with like 800, 900 views. So you can also find us on TikTok from all the latest little tidbits and stuff like that from these shows. So come see us. Yes, we do need merch. We'll get on that.
Hey, Brian, where do you find the incredible summary that's being done by AI of what we discuss?
Oh, where can you find that? That's done by Build Better, and that's a phenomenal.
But how
tool.
can the audience go see the transcript?
Where can the audience go
Where
see
can
the
the
transcript?
audience find that? Yeah, is
it part of
that posted somewhere on LinkedIn?
No, not the transcript from these calls. No. Is that what you're asking? Where can they find the transcripts
I
from
think
these?
that because the summary is so good, right?
Yes.
And compact, like it's a really nice little piece.
Basically, what Andy's saying is he'd love to do that for the group, to transcribe and summarize it and then post it on our YouTube. Good job, Andy.
Maybe this is a great opportunity to take that and make it into a newsletter. Maybe we
Those-
can just
yes.
ask our viewers if they want a
Okay.
newsletter.
Well,
do
Ideation.
they want
Newsletter, merch,
what kind of
and
merch do
Taco
they want to
Tuesday.
see?
Everybody did.
merchandise. We got interviews coming up, guys. Obviously, bigger and better things ahead for the Daily AI show. But hey, this is show number 20, so congrats to the team on that. And with that, we're over by another 4 minutes at this point. So we will say goodbye for the weekend. We will be back. Yes, it's Labor Day for a lot of people on Monday, but we will be here, and it will be Beth talking about Salesforce. I cannot wait. So until then, we will see you guys. Have a wonderful 3-day weekend if that's what you have coming up.
Aloha.
Bye-bye.